Welcome back, everybody. It's the Between the Ears show here on Mountain Eers Now and SI Fan Nation channel. I am Schuyler, Callihan, your host. Joined with me is Christopher Hall, co-publisher on the site at Mountain Ears Now. And it's hard to believe, man. It's here, fall camp. This is what this episode's for. It's your fall camp preview. We're going to dive into the quarterback battles, just talk about the defense, what that needs to look like in 2023, along with some of the other big storylines heading into the fifth year of the Neil Brown era. And Chris, I mean, there's been so much going on in the college football landscape, obviously with all the realignment stuff going on. The transfer portal's been a mess. Obviously, we've had our hands tied with the basketball craziness over the last couple of months. But everyone's kind of forgot about this football team, and maybe it's probably for a reason because not a lot of people have a lot of expectations for this team. They were voted dead last in the Big 12 media poll. Quick thought on that before we get into the fall camp preview. Just do you think that ranking is fair, or do you think that they should have been up a couple of spots?
Yeah, they should have been up quite a bit, really. I mean, I think I'm sure we'll touch on it in the preseason preview, but I agree with Neil Brown with some laziness out there on the poll. When you have Cincinnati getting almost double the votes and they have a complete overhaul of coaching staff and roster change, like it is laziness. Of course, West Virginia hasn't given them a lot of confidence over the last couple of years, and we have talked about why they struggled the last couple of years over like relentlessly how much we've talked about the impact of the NIL. But going into this year, they were able to retain a lot of talent, bring in some pieces. So I don't know why everyone's dumping on West Virginia the way they are, but kind of just is what it is. It'll play out on the field, and I suspect it'll be a better season. But what's being painted right now?
Yeah, I mean, I'm right there with you. I mean, I don't think this is the 14th team in the league. Now, are they a top 10 team in the league? Maybe, maybe not. That'll be something we can discuss maybe here in a few weeks when we have a better idea of what they're going to look like. But I mean, there's so many reasons as to why they should not be number 14. I mean, you look at some of these newcomers like Houston, for example, their roster is really, really bad, like in a very bad spot. And there's a couple others too. So, yeah, I agree with you there. 14 doesn't sit well with me, but again, I probably wouldn't have them much higher than that anyways. So let's stop that nonsense. We'll get back to that here in a couple of weeks. Fall camp preview, year 5 under Neil Brown, 3 losing seasons in 4 years. We all know the deal. This has to be the year where things get turned around. I don't think that that time is on Neil Brown's side right now. You got Ren Baker in, who seems to have his full support, but we all know ads, they want their own guy, and if something doesn't start to show that this program's heading in the right direction, there could be a change made at the end of 2023. So, are you looking for in fall camp that gives you some signs that maybe things are starting to finally turn in the right direction?
Consistency at receiver. Um, Offense should be fine if they can just have a pulse on the outside.
Yeah.
I Ford Wheaton, Sam James, they gave it all for the WVU program, but they never just became that guy, never became the playmaker on the outside. Haven't had a 1,000-yard receiver under Neil Brown. So it's a big year for West Virginia if they can just get a pulse on the outside. There's young talent, and they brought in Devin Carter. Um, kind of, coming in, it just kind of looks like what they already had on paper. Lacked consistency, had a big game at the end of the season last year. But you got to do it week in and week out in this conference. Just talk about the league, them being 14th. This is a really deep conference. May not be top heavy, but every week you got to come up with plays. And it can't just fall on the Carter or Jeremiah Aaron. You can look at a kid like Rodney Gallagher, seeing his pictures coming out of summer camp, how much bigger he's got. He's really setting himself up uh, to have not just a breakout season, but maybe set the single freshman receiving mark because there's a good chance that he's going to get a lot of playing time early. So you have a lot of young talent, and usually with young talent, you lack consistency. So a kid like Gallagher has been coached up well, has done everything right throughout his high school process, could be that guy. come in as second, third option quickly. Um, Outside of that, you're really looking uh, for guys. So there's a lot of names that's going to pop up, pop in and out. Um, Neil Brown, the staff always loves to talk freshmen because they're the new guys. Doesn't necessarily mean they're going to play a lot, but uh, probably going to happen in the receivers, and you're really going to need to see guys play above their age, mature mature quickly, and know that they're not going to win every battle, but can't hang your head. You just got to compete, and that's going to probably be the biggest challenge for Billy and Marshall in this young group. So when they get smacked in the mouth week one, I think it was today, the Nagorski Award was released. That there's I think 3 or 4 Penn State defenders on there. Three of
Yeah.
them were in the secondary, so they're going to get challenged quick. So there's not going to be a wade in the water, get the temperature, feel college football. They're going to go right into a hostile environment, and it's going to be a big test for this group week one. And they're going to probably hear a lot that there's not 1,000 every season under Neil Brown. This is an opportunity for them. I don't think quarterback play has been as bad as people say. We had offensive line struggles early on in Neil Brown, and this is the group that's been growing around Zach Frazier. So everything should be good. Garrett Green has shown that he uses his feet to look downfield to give his receivers a chance. So passing game should be good. It's just going to have to be up the receivers to get those 50-50 balls and get consistently open and give those guys a window to get it to.
Yeah, and sometimes you need that number one guy to be, whether it's whether it was Bryce Ford Wheaton last year, or I mean, I don't even know if you could really say he was a wide receiver one, but you usually have to have that kind of an alpha for your offense to really be efficient, especially in the Big 12. But when you have a group like this where you have Cortez Graham, Jeremiah Aaron, Rodney Gallagher, Devin Carter, the list goes on and on, I don't know that you necessarily need that alpha there, especially when you have the running back room that you have and how deep that running back room is and how you can rely on those backs in that offensive line to kind of push you forward. But if they can get one of those guys like a Cortez Graham or a Noah Massey, who a D2 transfer, not a lot of people know about him, big kid, 6'4", 230 pounds. If he can become a mismatch problem over the middle, that is what I think is really going to help take this offense to the next level. It's not Devin Carter. And I'm not saying Devin Carter can't be a wide receiver one, but Devin Carter is your deep ball guy. He is your vertical guy. He's your 50-50 ball guy. He's your home run guy. I don't really see him being someone that's going to cut people up in the intermediate game or the short passing game. That's stuff for the other guys. But if you can get Noah Massey and Cortez Braham going, or it doesn't even have to be Noah Massey, somebody else, that to me is what's going to take this offense to that next level. But for me, my biggest storyline is Neil Brown calling plays again. He went away for a year with Graham Harrell. Um, I, I don't know if you could really call it a success or not. Probably not. But when you look back at what Neil did in those first 3 years as the play caller, it's really hard for me to judge because they didn't have the personnel. They didn't have the quarterback play, or at least the consistency of it. As you mentioned just a minute ago, the offensive line was so young, and they really didn't have that guy at running back, or like they do now with CJ Donaldson. They didn't have the depth that they have now at receiver. They didn't even have a receiving option at tight end. Now they've kind of got some of those things. So although everyone else is a little bit bullish on Neil Brown and his play calling, I'm a little bit reserved in my judgment for that because we really don't know what he can do with this type of personnel. Do you feel like that was the right move? Again, going into year five, where it's a crucial year for him, do you feel like that was the right move for him to kind of to take control of those play calling duties again?
Yeah, at the end of the day, I mean, it's all going to fall on him. And you got to do, if you're in charge, you got to do what's best for you. Chad Scott's been around the game for a long time. Sure, he'd be a great play caller, but
Now's
um,
the time to find out.
I mean, I think it's the right move. If you're all in on everything that you built up to this point, you have an understanding of what you want. Um, I think it'll be fine. I think so much of it is just Like I said, the receivers have got to make plays. Guys have got to make plays. It's just something the offense is lack. CJ Donaldson is that guy. Will he stay healthy? Yes, everyone. Go around the league and you can say everyone that got injured last year, will they stay
Yeah.
healthy this year? So, but even you lose him, Jalen Anderson showed that he's a big play guy. Justin Johnson Jr. Is a gritty guy that can work inside and out. When we got Jaheim White coming in, he's definitely could be a big playmaker. So I think like cut to what you said, he's got more tools available than he had before. They were so hampered, I guess you could say. They just didn't have much option when he was calling the plays. So I think they'll be all right. Play calling's fine. Um, See, we can actually get the tight end involved, bringing in Cole Taylor this
Yeah.
year. Could definitely help open up the field.
So obviously the biggest storyline is going to be the quarterback battle, which you can call it a battle. I don't know that I'm necessarily buying it, and I don't think you are either. I don't think a lot of people in the state are really buying it as a battle. I think this is more seen as Garrett Green's job to lose more than anything. But you never know. Nico Marchiol had a great offseason and he comes in and just looks like a completely different quarterback, then we can have a conversation. But going into camp, it seems like it is Garrett's job to lose. The way he willed the team to win last year over Oklahoma, the way he played at times in the Kansas State game. He played a little bit there in the beginning of that Oklahoma State game before he got hurt. He just looks like he had, and you saw it at points throughout the season too. He's got that ability. Like the potential is very, very high for him because he's got the legs, he's got the quick release, but it's all about how he reads the coverages, how quickly he can get through that, and how quickly he can get past the bad habits of forcing balls into tight windows and just trying to make something out of every play. I think if Garrett Green can just be smart with the football and again get past some of those old habits, I think he's your guy and you ride with him. And I think you can do a lot of things with him. And think honestly he offers a little bit more than Nico Marchiol, at least from a running perspective. What about Garrett Green? Are you looking for in fall camp? And if he is named the starter, what does he got to do to keep a hold of that job outside of the obvious of not turning the ball?
The biggest issue is going to be timing. They do get to work a lot in the summer, but again, it's easier when you're going one on one. You know, the safety over the top and all that good stuff. So um, just timing when making those tight passes over the middle, a little stuff like that. Timing on the deep pattern. You don't want them short. Obviously, you want to give your guy the opportunity. So I think for the most part, he done a lot of good work. And again, I think most of the quarterback problems over the years are just receivers not getting open, not at all. You
Yeah,
look, and when the guy was open, there was usually someone in their face by that point, and that's something that the offensive line was better, but I thought something Garrett Green did really well last year that he improves a lot on was moving, not just within the pocket, but if he had to get outside the pocket, he kept his head downfield. His instinct was always to run first, but when he improvised and made plays downfield, that's really when he was at his best. So I'm really looking forward to see how he built on that and knowing the offense better and how they were able to expand it and being able to keep those linebackers honest like that. It's going to give him more mobility. I really do think that you're going to see leap and bounds and improvement with him. To be honest, because he's been in this program since 2020 with this staff. The offense hasn't changed dramatically, and I've always thought they've done the best that they could at highlighting the skill players' skill sets. There just wasn't that much talent out there. So we'll see some guys with some speed. I think really not really RPO, but when you can hit those seams quickly, get them on their heels a little bit, and then obviously with his legs, I think it could be. Again, so much is dependent on what these receivers could do, but again, you give them a little bit of spark on the outside, and all of a sudden, this offense is going to look really, really good.
yeah, and it'll be interesting to see how long this takes for them to name Green the starting quarterback, as we assume. I mean, maybe it is Nico. I don't know, but I would assume they're probably going to hold that back for as long as they can. I mean, when there's very few times where you can kind of play this little bit of a chess game, and you don't really know who's going to be out there for what, and all this stuff you can do with the quarterback position. I think you hold that into your back pocket as long as you can. Maybe even wait until they take the field. I mean, there's no reason to just announce it. I mean, Penn State can guess all they want. They could probably assume just like we would, but you never know. But Neil did mention back in the spring, like they're gonna let these two guys battle it out, and that he didn't really shy away from saying that maybe both of these guys could play. You know how I feel about two quarterback systems, but is there any way, any scenario you see where both of these guys are contributing week to week in a two quarterback system? Or do you think even Nico has a chance to win the starting job?
Nico definitely has a chance. He has the highest ceiling of the two. It's only his second season. Um, we'll see. I mean, if he comes in, I think if he comes in and wins the starting job, he's made big strides because
Yes.
everyone gravid, gravid, you know, gravitated towards Garrett. So if he comes in and wins the starting job, that's probably good news. I would say
Yeah.
that would be good news. But I think he's just going to have to remain patient. It's kind of that's college football. Whether if you're not the Archie Manning type or whatever, the Manning kid down in Texas, if you're not that type of player coming out of high school, there's a good chance you're not playing year one. He's probably not going to play year one. He is that kid. So it's very rare for freshman quarterback. Ideally, I think most coaches would like to start him at redshirt sophomore, give him two full seasons under the belt, watching the sidelines. That would kind of be where Nico is at this point. So I think another year, unless he's really made stride with his eyes and reading the defense with his eyes when the ball snapped, he will have to sit out a year. Just wait another year. Um, Opportunity will come without a doubt. Especially Garrett's not a big kid. Depending on how much they have to utilize him in the running game, uh, you hate to say that, but he could get banged up, and
Yeah.
so he has to be ready. And there's a good chance. See every year, but he's probably going to get an opportunity at some point, whether Garrett just gets knocked out for a game, for a play, helmet pops up, anything. He's about to come in. You just don't want to just hand it off to CJ when everybody's doing. I know that's where it's going to go. So be ready to play, go make a play, and then all of a sudden you could work your way as a starter in the middle of the season if Garrett struggles. If he doesn't adjust mid October to what everyone's stopping what he does well, and I think that's probably one of the bigger keys this season is when the rest of the Big 12 catches up to whatever they're going to be doing this season, how do these kids respond? They've been slow to respond over the years. Of course, that's youth. This is still a fairly young team as well, and first year quarterback. There's not a lot of tape on Gary Green, so we'll see.
Yeah.
It's a be with this group because you still just don't know. You should have a solid offensive line.
Yeah, and I think too, and I've said this a couple of times this offseason, like I think another reason why I lean toward Garrett Green in this situation is because he can handle, even though it's been a small sample size, he can handle being in a game situation right now. You don't really know about Nico yet. We did see a little bit in that Oklahoma State game, but to go in there week one at Happy Valley in that environment right out of the gate, I mean that's a tough task. And like Neil has said multiple times before, and I 100% agree with him, you never want to put a quarterback in there until you know for certain he is ready for that moment. Because sometimes those guys go in, they really struggle, and for whatever reason, they don't ever bounce back. They're never the same kid after that. For some reason, that just happens with quarterbacks. They're very fragile. You have to be careful with how you bring those guys along, and I think Neil understands that. He's got a kid with Garrett Green that he embraces this kind of stuff. Like he gets pumped up, and that's not to say Nico doesn't, but Garrett Green brings the energy. He can match that. He can block all that other stuff out. I think he's more ready for this week one in Happy Valley than Nico may be right out of the gate. Maybe we see Nico halfway through the season or towards the end of the season, but again, this to me is Garrett Green's job to lose. Before we move over to the defense, I did want to bring out a couple of position changes that I wanted to mention here. Also, Brandon Yates and Jaquay Hubbard both split time at right tackle last season. They're going to be moving inside, battling at right guard. Doug Nestor is going from right guard to right tackle, which I think is a big. That's the right decision for them. It gives them more length and athleticism there. You have on the defensive side, you got Jaido Favors. I've always messed his name up, so I'm sorry. But he's moving into the will spot where you have Lance Dixon. That's where he played a year ago. He's now moving over to Spear full time, which is where we've seen him at times as well. So there's some new guys and some new faces or in some new places on that defense. So going to that side of the ball, you've got a lot of transfers, a lot of guys that are probably going to be stepping up into starting roles that were probably depth guys a year ago. Where do you see this defense? What is the expectations for this defense heading into 2023?
This is another group that should improve. Of course, they got a lot of room that they can improve.
Yeah, I mean it's a pretty low bar now, Chris. I mean,
Uh, it's going to be. I think a lot of eyes are going to be on the defense because how poorly um, they played last year, and a lot of that just was injuries early. And they admitted that they weren't prepared for those injuries early, and I don't know how much more they could have prepared, but obviously they know better than us. But you lose Charles Woods right out the gate, and you immediately have to bring in a new guy
yep,
to be on the road at Pitt. So just talked about losing confidence early, getting thrown out in the fire. That kind of happened with the secondary last year. There was a lot of young guys, and you say that, and then, okay, a lot of these guys are returning in the secondary, and that's the good news. The bad news is defensive line had a big major overhaul, and you're
yes,
looking not having a steals along the defensive line since what 2017 was the last time a steals wasn't along the defensive line. So it's going to be different up front. I think that's really where the weakness is on paper going in. I haven't really got to see what these guys are going to do up front, really. But I do like that they're athletic up front and they do have speed on the edge. And that can make up for some of that in the middle. But third and short, is that going to be Koba coming up from the middle? They're making a stop. They haven't shied away from doing five defensive linemen. They can do it again this year. But they're going to have to find some push along that defensive line. I think that's the biggest concern right now is that defensive front.
yeah, absolutely. It's 100% without a doubt the biggest concern, and I would argue probably as weird as it sounds to say, the secondary may be the one spot you feel pretty good about going into the year because of the depth that they got in the transfer portal. At safety, you bring in Keyshawn Cobb and Anthony Wilson. You get Beanie Bishop and Montre Miller at corner. I mean, you got potentially Jacoby Spells, who's a big time recruit, maybe as your third option at one of the corner spots. And I think that secondary is just light years better than what it was a year ago. Linebacker, I still think there's some concern there with some depth. I don't know. I highly doubt they're going to be adding anybody between now and the start of the season. I think they have one or two spots left, so they can. But I'm not sure that they're going to add somebody at this late in the game. But linebacker to me is the one that really kind of outside of the defensive line, obviously, I think is the one spot where you're a little concerned about. But you do have guys that like the top guys, your starters are as good as it gets. Lee Koba, Jared Bartlett, Lance Dixon, but where that depth is kind of a concern for me. So
It
uh,
is they're versatile. All those guys on the top of the line can play all three spots. They can switch. They can do all kinds of different things. But then you run into the problem of how many plays are they playing? Like
yes,
they may
are they
have
getting
to lean
80 snaps a game?
early. They may lean on them early, but at some point these guys have got to step up and take reps when it comes, even late September. You don't want to beat your guys up at Penn State. Shouldn't be a problem with Duquesne and then Pitt right off the rip. So that's two big games no matter 3 weeks. You really got to find some of these guys. Again, they can do some things personnel wise, kind of lighten the load a little bit, but be interesting to see how that shakes out. That's another area. You can say it really through all this team is a lot of young talent. How quick can they pick it up and how freely can they play?
Yeah. So I think that's going to do it for our camp preview. Chris, do you have any other final thoughts before we get out of here?
No, hope for the best.
Say your prayers, Mountaineer fans. But no, all kidding aside, it should be an interesting season, an interesting fall camp. Chris will be there at practice for the days that they allow us to be there. So be sure to follow him on Twitter or X, whatever we call it nowadays. WV Hallbilly, yeah, the Des Bryant X. Um, WV
Wow.
Hallbilly, you can follow me at Callihan underscore. I'm going to be having I'm going to throw up my game by game predictions probably within the next day or two. So be on the lookout for that at Mountaineers Now on Twitter. You can follow us on YouTube as well, or subscribe, whatever they like to call that. Mountaineers Now as well. Be sure to hit that subscribe button, give us a like, follow, whatever it is. Help support our show. And we'll be back probably early next week, probably around the same time to give you an update after a few days of practice under the belt. So for Christopher Hall, I'm Schuyler Callihan. You've been watching Between the Ears here on Mountaineers Now and SI Fan Nation channel.